Good morning. I know some people are having trouble hearing. If you could raise your hands and let me know if you can be heard. Oh, I mean, if I can be heard. Okay, thanks. I think we fixed the problem. Well, good morning and welcome to West Valley UU. My name is Valerie Lynch and I'm serving as your worship associate for this morning's service. So welcome as we continue to offer our services on Zoom, and hopefully it won't be for much longer. We're so glad you could join us this morning. Everyone is welcome here, regardless of your gender identity or sexual orientation. We strive to be a community where everyone can be their true selves. You're welcome here regardless of educational level, financial status, political leanings, immigration status, or any of the other labels that are used to divide one another in our society. They don't do so here. Thank you for coming, and we're very glad you're here. I didn't see any announcements today. Did anyone have anything? Okay.
First, I just sent you the one about Dorothy.
Oh, well, that will be more of a joy. So, okay. I would like to wish everyone a happy Mother's Day, to all the mothers, stepmothers, adoptive mothers, foster mothers, birth mothers, grandmothers, great-grandmothers, and all those who take on the mom roles in people's lives. And our hearts go out to mothers who have lost children, who have been separated from their children, as well as those who don't have a loving mom in their lives. And for all those who find these celebratory days that can be difficult, we honor that too. Okay, this morning we'll start with lighting the chalice. The adventure of life is to learn. The purpose of life is to grow. The nature of life is to change. The challenge of life is to overcome. The essence of life is to care. The opportunity of life is to serve. The secret of life is to dare. The spice of life is to befriend. The beauty of life is to give. And those are words by William Arthur Ward. Okay, let us now read together our covenant. Love is the doctrine of our congregation. The quest for truth is our holy right, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in friendship. Thus do we covenant. Okay, every week in our church we take up an offering. We're not meeting together in person, but it's still important to take care of our church community and to continue the spiritual practice of offering financial contributions. Okay, please take a few minutes to prepare a check to mail in or donate via the link that is in our chat box right now or on our website. Thank you, Joe. I am so happy to welcome our speaker this morning, Reverend Cathy Corbin-Menino. We're so happy to have you back this month. Her talk today is Acceptance. It isn't what you think.
Thank you, Valerie and Paul. And I too want to wish everyone a happy Mother's Day, to any and all that have nurtured and loved another into life. It's being a miracle worker, and it really does need to be celebrated. The word accept comes from the Old French and means to take what is offered. The Latin root acceptare means to take or receive willingly. Acceptance involves give and take, so that there must be a flexibility in the interaction. Acceptance is a transactional virtue. Our third UU principle is acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. At first glance, it might look as if the principle is limited by the phrase in our congregations, but acceptance of one another is actually a corollary to our first principle of recognizing the worth and dignity of every person. So a natural extension would be acceptance and encouragement is offered, is extended to everyone. UU Minister J.G. Peter Fleck published a book of reflections entitled Come As You Are. The inspiration for the title came from a sign outside the Universalist Meeting House in Provincetown, Cape Cod. The UU invitation is to come as you are and expect to grow. I tend to begin my talks with definitions, explanations of the meaning of phrases or words or concepts. So I did that in a basic way just now, but I thought I'd focus more on what acceptance is not, hence the title of my talk. Acceptance isn't what you think. First, acceptance is not about liking, wanting, choosing, or supporting something when you desire something else. I have found two particularly irritating responses to unwanted situations. They are, oh, well, it must be God's will. Or God would never give you something you can't handle. I have found those very unhelpful. However, I do believe that when we struggle against what is, when we refuse to accept it, when we resist and reject it, we do suffer. Choosing to allow it to be, whatever it is, since you can't change it in that moment anyway, is about simply making space for it. You don't have to like it or want it, but allowing and accepting what is gives yourself permission for you to be just as you are too, to feel just what you feel, experience just what you're experiencing without shame or anxiety. Then, and only then, can things possibly shift. Because secondly, acceptance doesn't mean that you can't work on changing things. Sometimes we believe that acceptance is a sign of apathy, passivity, giving up, relinquishing an opportunity for some kind of intervention. This does not have to be the case. You can accept your body and still change it. Accept your emotions and acknowledge their impermanence. Accept your behavior one day when you might change it the next day. An unwanted or uncomfortable situation may eventually shift. Because, thirdly, acceptance doesn't mean it's going to be this way forever. This is one time that it is okay not to focus on the present. Try to focus on your acceptance of the present, letting go of the desire that things must change now. In fact, detach even from hoping that it will be different in the future. Focus on acceptance on the present, current moment. You can practice acceptance in all areas of your life. Your current experience or reality, other people's beliefs and ideas, your appearance, your emotions, your health, your past, your thoughts, other people. Again, this doesn't mean you necessarily endorse whatever it is that you're accepting in these realms. Rather, you recognize that you can't change the current nature of the exact moment or this person. And acceptance helps to manage anxiety and can bring a sense of peace. And fourth, acceptance must be practiced. If I had $1 for every time I talked about how important it is to practice a certain spiritual discipline, I would be a very rich woman. The word accept is a verb. It is an active process and must be practiced consistently and consciously. It's really rare to hear that someone has chosen to accept their emotions, their physical pain, their body, their difficult relationships, their past, all in one day, never to think about it again. It can require real effort at times, can be frustrating at times. But like creating a clearing in a field by walking the same path many times, every time you practice acceptance towards something, you create and strengthen neural pathways in your brain, making it a little easier as you go along. It's natural to vacillate back and forth between feelings of acceptance and feelings of resistance. Make space for the entire spectrum of both those experiences, and you'll notice that your internal critic will, over time, become quieter. But what if acceptance of a particular reality just seems totally unacceptable? It just goes against our principles. It is something we don't want as part of our life in any way. Look at the pandemic. Most of us didn't want it as part of our reality. But as always the case, when fighting with or against reality, reality will win. In looking at the denial response to the pandemic, I saw 3 myths that led people to choose denial of what was really happening. The first myth was, if I admit to what is happening, it must mean that I agree with it, that I'm okay with it, that I'm comfortable with it, and that I'm on board with this situation that nobody wants. Myth buster. Acceptance does not require that we're okay with what we're accepting. It does not imply that we now want what we don't want. It does not include feeling good or peaceful about what you're accepting. It does not mean we now agree with it. We are just acknowledging that it exists. Myth 2. If I or we accept this, then that means we're going to stop trying to change it. It's as if we believe that accepting what is synonymous with agreeing to be passive, to give up on change, to surrender all efforts to make things different. Acceptance is saying we agree that this situation will go on forever, and so we'll just pull the covers up over our heads. Myth buster. Acceptance does not mean suspending efforts to change what is. It does not imply that we're giving up on reality ever being different. Acceptance is all about now and has nothing to do with the future. Acceptance is not an act of passivity, but rather an act of wisdom, of agreeing to start our efforts from where we actually are, considering what actually is. Myth number 3, acceptance means failure. In our culture, acceptance is for the meek, for losers. It's what we do when we fail to doing everything else. We see acceptance as choiceless choice, a disempowering and depressing end to a battle lost. Myth buster. Acceptance is not an act of failure. It can, with the right understanding, be experienced as an act of courage. It is for those who have the strength to face the truth and stop denying it. It can be, in fact, a first step in a process of genuine success and movement. Maybe another more palatable word for some than acceptance would be concurrence. I concur. I agree. This is the way it is right now. Because the fact is, something inside of us will never fully accept or be okay with what we don't want. And that part of us needs to be included in the whole process too. We can relax the part of us that is screaming no to this situation. It means again that we make space for not wanting in us. We accept the situation and also our fierce rejection of it at the same time. Don't ask yourself to get rid of the resistance. Resistance is the best friend of most UUs, often the way to social justice. Resistance is there to protect us. But we can accept and allow the negative situation while also resisting the violent hating of it and angry response to it. We accept, acknowledge that this particular situation is indeed happening, that it exists. It's not saying that we like it, that we agree with it, that we will stop trying to change it. It simply means that we're accepting that it is actually what is so. The acceptance is opening to reality as it is, not how we feel about it. Just that it actually is this way. I think that is how I'm trying to cope with systemic racism. Getting to the point that it is so and still be able to breathe. Denial of systemic racism has a kind of insanity to it. So if we can practice relaxing with the reality of it, aware that no one has an answer to this situation in its entirety at this moment, while at the same time wanting it to be different with all our heart, then paradoxically, that yes frees us up to start to change the situation and change ourselves in relation to it. As someone once said, a situation will change or you will change, but change will happen. Acceptance allows us at least to begin doing whatever we need to do from wherever we are, and it is a profound and powerful step. It requires immense courage to be honest about where we are, and the willingness to feel what's actually true, which can be excruciating, but is far more useful than denying what we already know or arguing that the truth shouldn't be the truth. Relaxing with what is puts an end to the futile and draining argument that this is not the way it's supposed to be. And most importantly, it allows us to get on with the business of living life on life's terms. Jon Kabat-Zinn writes in Coming to Our Senses, Healing Ourselves and the World Through Mindfulness, that acceptance doesn't, by any stretch of the imagination, mean passive resignation. Quite the opposite. It takes a huge amount of fortitude and motivation to accept what is, especially when you don't like it, and then work wisely and effectively as best you possibly can with the circumstances you find yourself in and with the resources at your disposal, both inner and outer, to mitigate, heal, redirect, and change what can be changed. To accept what is gives us permission to finally be authentic with ourselves. When we can say, I accept that this is the way it is, even if I hate it and don't know what to do about it, then we can at least be in the truth, which ultimately is the most empowering, brave, and self-loving place from which to create our life. There once was an old Chinese farmer who had one son and a horse. His wife had died many years ago when his son was a baby. The farm was quite small, but they grew enough food to get by. The farm was in a valley north of the famous Yellow Mountain in the Anhui province in southern China. One day, the farmer's horse broke through the small corral on the farm and went galloping off in the direction of the nearby hills. The farmer's neighbors felt sorry for the farmer, for a horse was very valuable to every farmer. What very bad luck to have lost your horse, they said. Why do you say that? Asked the old farmer. Who knows if it's bad luck? The very next night, the horse returned, and behind him came 12 wild horses, which he had led back home with him. The farmer's son quickly closed the gate of the small corral, and instead of one horse, they now had 13. The neighbor stared into the corral the next morning and said, "What extraordinary good luck to have 13 horses." "Why do you say that?" the old farmer replied. "Who is to say whether it is good luck?" The farmer and his son went to the village and purchased enough wooden posts and rails to enlarge the corral because the horses did not have enough room. They also had to buy more hay to keep all the horses well fed. It took a full week of hard work to make the corral larger. Once this was done, the old farmer's son went out riding on one of the new horses, but the horse was still wild and it threw him off. He fell to the ground and broke his leg. The farmer took his son to the doctor who lived in the nearby village. The doctor put a splint on the young man's leg and gave him a pair of crutches so he could get around. The neighbors visited the old farmer to commiserate. "What very bad luck," they said, "that your son has broken his leg." "Why do you say that?" the old farmer asked him. "Who is to say whether it is bad luck?" And indeed, A short while later, the emperor's militia came, forcing all the able-bodied young men in the village and the surrounding farms to go fight in the war, where many of them would probably lose their lives. But when they saw the old farmer's son bent over on his crutches with a broken leg, they passed him by and went on their way. "How lucky you are," the neighbor said. Given so many changes, all the old farmer could do was smile and accept once again what had happened. In positive psychology, there is something psychologists are calling radical acceptance. It moves the process of acceptance a step further into gratitude. Reverend David A. Morris writes in his book, Everything is a Gift, that radical acceptance can be a challenging thought. What does radical acceptance look like when you're lying in bed next to the cold, empty space where your beloved lay before the illness took her? What does it look like when there's suddenly no job to go to, or when the storm has flooded your house? What does it mean to radically accept that I may not be able to live as I choose much longer, as my health or the changes that come with age rob me of the strength to care for myself independently? What does radical acceptance look like when I or someone I love has sustained some catastrophic hurt? What about when someone has harmed me or when I have hurt someone I love? What does radical acceptance look like when I turn to the wider world and I'm confronted by the immense injustices of racism, of homophobia, of massive inequalities of wealth? These everyday situations of suffering certainly test the idea that simply accepting what is will somehow bring an end to the pain that seems so real and present. We want something powerful, something practical, something that will change the situation. Yet outrage and rejection are not empowering. Refusing to accept that things are what they are tends to induce paralysis or lead to actions that make the situation worse. When we remain in the experience of the situation just as it is, Tara Brach says in her book, Radical Acceptance, something begins to happen. We feel freer, options open up before us. We see with more clarity how we want to proceed. Radical acceptance helps us to heal and move on. It acknowledges our own experience in this moment as the first step in wise action. What would it be like then, in any moment of struggle, to accept this moment as it is? It means taking a deeper look. What is really going on right now? What chain of circumstance and choices led to this moment? What desire or pain or fear or longing is driving my own feelings? What desire or pain, fear, or longing is driving others in this situation? What part have I played in bringing this moment about? Where is my true agency, my capacity to affect this situation? Can I hold all of this with loving care and greatly look at what I must do next? Everything that happens in our life is a gift. Some of them we might prefer to give back. Yet this is our one and only precious life. Every single moment of it, in joy and in sorrow, in hope and in loss, in celebration and in mourning. Poet Jane Kenyon was 47 when she died. In reflecting on their life together, her husband, Donald Hall, the National Medal of Art recipient given by President Obama, wrote, "We lived in the house of poetry, which was also the house of love and grief, the house of solitude and art, the house of Jane's depression and my cancer." In 1995, Jane was named Poet Laureate of New Hampshire. She died later that same year from leukemia. I'd like to close with her poem called Otherwise. I got out of bed with 2 strong legs. It might have been otherwise. I ate cereal with sweet milk and a ripe, flawless peach. It might have been otherwise. I took the dog uphill to the birchwood. All morning I did the work I love. At noon I lay down with my mate. It might have been otherwise. We ate dinner together at a table with silver candlesticks. Might have been otherwise. I slept in a bed in a room with paintings on the wall and planned another day just like this day. For one day I know it will be otherwise. May we each grow in our capacity to accept and hold ourselves and our world in compassionate awareness as we seek the loving actions that will bring healing and joy to ourselves and to our world. Although denial is often easier, it does not serve us well. Accepting what is allows us to meet each moment with courage and hope. And if we want to be radical, we may even try acceptance with gratitude. May it be so.
Thank you, Reverend Cathy, for a very thought-provoking talk. It's wonderful. Okay, let us now read together the mission statement of West Valley UU. This congregation, we agree to provide a safe place to celebrate diversity, draw inspiration for living better lives, foster social and environmental justice, and compassionately support each other in our spiritual searches. Okay, we'll now extinguish the chalice with a benediction from Reverend Cathy.
My benediction is something I think we've all heard. May we accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and wisdom to know the difference forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning. Thank you again, Reverend Cathy, for the wonderful reflection you just gave. Eric, Lee, Joe, and Emily for the music, and Paul and Barry for working this technology to make these services possible. We will now have a postlude, and afterwards we'll share joys and sorrows and concerns which won't be recorded due to privacy concerns. Please stay on for the fellowship hour after, and thank you again for coming this morning.